One of the interesting features of being a student is being one person in a household and having to prepare meals for just one person. Happily, I do have a refrigerator, so I can prepare food and then put it in some containers and eat it progressively. But I'm working now on a dish that I picked up, actually I think from either New Age Journal or Yoga Journal years and years ago. It might even have been in the 80s, certainly in the 90s. And the dish, as I understand it, and I'm maybe pronouncing this really horribly, is genkaretua, which I understand as being chickpea curry. It's chickpeas and tomatoes. And it starts with a paste of garlic, which I don't usually use very much, but for this particular dish it's kind of basic to the cooking. And here I do have it's hard to illustrate to you here with the tripod and everything, it's kind of cumbersome, but I do have a compost bucket, which has been a bit of a trouble. We're getting into fruit fly season. It's mid-September here in Lancaster County, and it's we're going to have fruit flies right on through into November typically. I shop at a local orchard outlet and just sort of inevitably pick up some fruit flies. You can get them in the grocery store these days pretty often too. And that means that I'm too busy with classes and things to be cooking everything, and I have succumbed to the convenience of the microwave, and I splurged. I don't know what the proper term is, but I did buy a microwave. So in the microwave I have some potatoes, which are extraordinarily hot at the moment. They're not really extraordinarily hot, because you should expect that they would be hot after they've been in the microwave. So they are ordinarily hot, but they're also very hot. So I also have on the stove chickpeas, which this recipe I've made with canned chickpeas. I've made it with dried chickpeas, which I have prepared. Here I have them in a pressure cooker. There they are. This recipe also calls for tomatoes, and although this is canning season, there is that fly issue, and here in a small apartment galley kitchen, I'm advertising Weiss quality. If you live in South Central Pennsylvania, I strongly recommend that you patronize Weiss markets. I do. They probably at the corporate level are just as terrible as anybody else, but I like the consistency of their food, and it is inexpensive. So also, going into national, and I'm not really advocating these particularly, this is just what I get conveniently and inexpensively at the store, but this involves coconut milk, which I have found that the least expensive coconut milk to be had is this brand, but buy whatever you like. And this is really pretty, this is a pretty simple recipe. I'm not as involved with spices as I have been prior to having COVID. And when I had COVID, I lost my sense of taste very largely, and it hasn't fully returned, so I kind of keep things to a minimum. This recipe actually calls for black peppercorns to be ground with the with cilantro root, which is very conveniently to be had if you shop at a market where they have whole cilantro, including the root. But where I have been shopping, I haven't had that, and I haven't grown cilantro myself, although I probably will be soon. But at the moment, I don't have any cilantro or coriander root. So I'm going to substitute, as I sometimes do, ground coriander, and this is a bit of false advertising, because I bought this from Spice Hunter at one time and it was fine, but what I do now is I buy coriander seeds in bulk from the local Bhutanese Nepali store, and then for those of you who are in the Lancaster area, it's Everest grocery, for full disclosure. There are several others in this area, and they are fine, but Everest is the one that I tend to go to. And so I grind this up in a spice grinder or a coffee grinder, and so this is not really, it is what it says, it's ground coriander, but it's not from this particular company. But they would be fine if you get them in your area. That would work for this recipe. So I have the garlic, I have the coriander, I have the white peppercorns, coconut milk, small dice. The only some small diced tomatoes, the chickpeas, the potatoes, which are cooling. This recipe also calls for soy sauce, which, again, a Weiss quality, and they're fine. I also have Kikkoman at the moment, which is very widely available, but I'm going to be using Weiss quality today. And this recipe also calls for honey and sugar, but I often omit those, but the recipe calls for them. Sometimes I've used sugar instead of honey, and more often I just omit it entirely. So I'm going to take a break while I prep some of these things, and I'll come back.